I had to run into the woods, off trail into the woods, and I had like explosive diarrhea on the trail. And how is it that some of our most epic fails turn into some of our greatest and life-changing triumphs? So my story today is about how I overcame hypoglycemia or bonking or hitting the wall in the sports world. And this is going to be a little bit of a TMI story, and it's also going to be my journey into solving this problem that plagues so many people, whether you're an athlete or not an athlete. It plagues people every day. And I might do some TMI, but I'm just going to riff it here for a little bit and see if I can help you overcome any of your hypoglycemia or bonking type issues. So this story really goes back to early 2000s. Really, I started my triathlon career in 2001, and from time to time I would bonk or hit the wall. So what that means is when your blood sugar crashes and you run out of glycogen in your liver and muscles to pull for energy. And I was having a problem fairly regularly, so it was always this challenge of how much food I was eating and not being too full, but being able to exercise. And it was actually a day-to-day problem too, not just with exercising, but if I didn't eat every like 2 or 3 hours throughout the day, then I might get shaky or lightheaded. I might feel faint. I'd get really tired. And these are all symptoms of hypoglycemia. That's low blood sugar. And if I look all the way back to my childhood, I actually had these problems also without even realizing it in the early 70s and in the 80s, playing soccer games. But, during soccer games, you'd play a half and then you'd have orange slices or bug juice or, like some sugary drink, and that would bump up your sugar in your bloodstream again, and then you could get through the rest of the game, the second half. And I think a lot of sports still do that today, but there's a lot better nutrition out there now. So what was happening is I was also getting to the backpacking scene. So that my backpacking career started in 1998 with NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School. And I was really worried on my first backpacking trip about this bonking issue. But thankfully, with the NOLS diet and how they set everything up, I always had enough of the carbs and fats and calories throughout the day, and we were eating regularly throughout the day, that I never had an issue on this 3-week backpacking trip in 1998. Okay, fast forward a couple years, and now I'm getting into triathlon, swimming, biking, and running, and I'm kind of bonking more often. I'm running out of glycogen. I'm crashing. So I started really increasing my carbohydrate intake a lot. And this is early 2000s when fat was still like the big no-no, like fat's bad, which is totally not true. But that's what, I still believed. And I had a very low fat diet, back then. And, I tried increasing my carbohydrates because I thought I wasn't topping off my glycogen stores. So this is going to get a little bit technical. Hopefully, you're into that. If not, you can just fast forward to the end of this where I really talk about a total program that you can do, no charge, that you can do to really solve this issue, which really boils down to basic human biology. So anybody can do it. So what really the biggest trigger for me was I was on a backpacking trip with some friends, and we were doing a traverse of the White Mountains of New Hampshire. So this was going to be a 3-night, 4-day trip, covering the entire, main section of the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And on the very first day, which was this long climb out of Crawford Notch, And in the afternoon, I totally hit the wall. My blood sugar like dropped. I was just like out of energy. And I was just really weird because I was eating and everything, but I was just out of energy. Okay, so that was day one. Okay, so I fuel up the next day, get a good night's sleep, eat dinner, fuel up the next day, and we're going again. And then on the second day, we were coming up to the summit of Mount Washington, and again, I was really dragging trying to get up that mountain. And I ultimately, got up to the top, and we went to the restaurant and I ate some food and felt better. But again, I'd really crashed. I hit the wall. I bonked, again. And that's 2 days in a row, which is just really bizarre. I've never had an experience like this. And, we're out in the woods and everything. And then on day three, we traverse down several peaks, and we get down lower and we fuel up with dinner. And then we decide to keep hiking on after our dinner. So I was really well fueled. And, this was the third day now. It's in like early evening, maybe 6, 7 o'clock. And I bonked hard. I mean, I literally just sat down in the middle of the trail with my pack on, and I was like, I am done. I can't go anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm completely spent. I feel like garbage. I'm done. And then my body was really starting to react, and my stomach was really hurting. And here's a little bit of the TMI, but I had to run into the woods, off trail into the woods, and I had like explosive diarrhea on the trail, and it was like not stopping. I don't even know where it was coming from, but it was just horrible. And it's bad enough having diarrhea at home, on a toilet where you can clean up and everything. But I was out in the woods. I only had a certain amount of toilet paper. This was before I would use a bidet. But oh my God, I mean, it was a mess. And I felt terrible. And thankfully, my buddy like took care of me, and he's like, here, eat this. And he gave me a bar to eat, and he started taking stuff out of my backpack and putting it into his to lighten my load. And, the bar helped a lot. I drank probably some sugary drink or something like Gatorade or something. And I felt better, again, getting my blood sugar back up. And we actually were able to hike out, get to a hotel, and didn't do that third night like we were planning. And I'm like, this is serious. I mean, I was about 32 years old at the time, and, having sugar drop, hypoglycemia, bonking in the backcountry is really dangerous. Obviously, it's dangerous in the front country when you've got, hospital nearby, but we were out in the woods, and this is just terrible. Luckily, I had my friends to take care of me, but I was like, I have got to figure this out. Like, what is going on? And, I started making doctor's appointments and getting checkups and getting physicals. And I did a stress test, on the treadmill, checking your blood pressure and everything, checking your blood work. And all my blood work, all the diagnostics came back completely, perfectly normal. In fact, the doctor was like blown away by how fit and healthy I was, how efficient, or not efficient, but what good conditioning I was in based on my stress test, my treadmill test. So they had nothing to tell me. I thought I had a heart problem. I went to a cardiologist. I went to like an endocrinologist. I was trying everything to figure out why I kept hitting the wall and bonking, and they had no answers at all. And I'm like lost, but I was like, I've got to figure this out. I want to keep doing these activities. I don't want to be a slave to, taking a gel before a spin class, or I'd get shaky. I used to have to take a gel before like a 45, 50-minute commute home at the end of the day. This is how messed up my metabolism, my cellular metabolism was back in early 2000s. It was like 2002. So I went into full-on research mode, and I had already been trying to increase my carbs. I'm trying to top off, and I found that barley has like the best glycemic index. It's like the opposite, of sugar. And I forget which way the glycemic index goes. I think it's a high number is a slower burn, and a low number is more the sugary stuff. But I might have that backwards. But anyway, Barley, I found, was like the most complex carbohydrate you could eat. And I'm topping off my glycogen stores, and I'm always eating my carbs, and I was eating the right amount of calories, but it was mostly carbs, some protein, and like virtually, very, very low fat. And um, and then I went and got a physical again, getting my cholesterol checked, and my cholesterol was like, through the roof. It was terrible. My doctor wanted to put me on statins, and I'm like, no, 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 I'm not doing that. And with this increase in carbohydrate, my mood was also day to day really low. I was actually getting really depressed, and I had no reason to be depressed. My job was good. My dating life was good. I was exercising a lot. I'm physically healthy. Everything was looking good, and I was getting really, really depressed. I was so depressed that I was actually starting to look for help from a therapist or psychologist or something, because that's how bad. And I've never had depression before, but it was so bad that I was really starting to I was about to start making calls to make an appointment. And then I found this book, and I'll put a link, even though I think it's out of print. It's called Sports Nutrition for Endurance Athletes. And I read this book, and it changed my life. It explained diet. It explained how the body really works, which you actually learn in biology or microbiology, if you remember the Krebs cycle. And what I found is that I was eating the right amount of calories, but my ratios were all off for somebody my size and my activity level. And so, like I mentioned a minute ago, I had gone to a doctor. My cholesterol was through the roof. He wanted to put me on medication, which would have to be on for the rest of my life, and I don't want to do that. So in 24 hours, with the depression and the high cholesterol and the bonking issue, then I read this book, and I learned that my fat intake was way too low, my carbohydrate intake was way too high, and the biggest factor is that my body was only accustomed to burning sugars for fuel and not burning fat for fuel. Okay? And that's where this all boils down to, is your cellular metabolism and how your body makes ATP, which is the energy block that you need to do your activity and to think also. So within 24 hours, I more than doubled my fat intake, and I brought my carbohydrates down to a normal level. They were still high because I'm, very active. And my protein, was still, solid, balanced really. And within 24 hours of more than doubling my fat intake and bringing my carbohydrates to a more normal level, my depression went away like instantly, 24 hours later, by eating fat. And what I learned also later on, I think it was a different book or different research, is that too many carbs, when you carbo load out, that can lead to depression. And when you don't have enough fat in your diet, that can lead to depression. And it seems like our society is still very fat averse. Like we were afraid of fat, which is all left over from the 70s and 80s. And all that information is actually wrong, but it's still left over. My mom still does not use fat, does not have much fat in her diet. And I know it's not good for them, but this is, what she's been doing for 80 years. So just, let her do what she wants to do, right? So then what I learned, again, from this book is how to train my body to burn fat as its primary fuel source. And what I've learned over, since then and over the past 20 some years, 23, 22 years now, is that there's two real pathways to creating energy. Okay. You can use, sugars. Well, there's three macros: carbohydrates, which are simple and complex carbs, fats, and proteins. Okay. Now, through the Atkins and then paleo and now keto diets, it's all about limiting your carbs. So low carbohydrate diets and eating a lot of protein and you get the fat along with the protein, or they push fat and protein. And the idea behind this diet is, we want to lose weight. That's like most people's goal. But the idea is that you starve your body of carbohydrates in order to force your body to just use fat as your primary fuel source. Okay, so that's kind of the mechanism around Atkins, paleo, keto, is that you deprive your body of carbohydrates. The only thing left to really burn for energy is fats, which is really the most efficient fuel source, macronutrient, and that's what you use. So what I learned from this book is that if you exercise the right way and you train your body to use fat as its primary fuel source, then you're going to get the same effect. You're using fats, and these are fats like through your body. And I'm not talking about the fat that we see to have these like really, awesome physiques like the bodybuilders and all, but this is how we use the fat throughout our whole body for fuel. Okay, so basically, most of the country, at least in the United States, we're all sugar burners. Our bodies are really only accustomed to burning sugar as its primary fuel, okay, not fat. And then we keep eating all the time, because when our sugar starts to drop, we get hypoglycemic. Well, that's not really a quote, it's real. Your blood sugar drops, you get shaky and lightheaded, you feel faint, you need sugar. And doctors will actually recommend people who are hypoglycemic, doctors will recommend eating candy, keeping hard candy around. I don't know how hard candy or any kind of sugary candy is a medication, is a way to go for your health and well-being. Recommending sugar is just poison. It really is. But we do need carbohydrates, and some sugars are okay, but like fruits and whatever. But what we really need to do is train our body to be a fat burning machine instead of a sugar burning machine. So if you get hangry, and that becomes like this badge of honor, like, oh, I get hangry if I don't eat, every 2 hours, that's unhealthy cellular metabolism, and you can change that. You can fix that. So one way to do it is through your diet, where you deprive yourself and starve yourself of carbohydrates through like Atkins, keto, paleo diet, or you can teach and train your body to be a fat burning machine. And that's what I did, and that's what I learned from this book, is how to train properly. And that's what I'm going to go over now. How to train properly to no longer bonk or hit the wall or be hypoglycemic or get hangry. Here is the solution, okay? So the solution is base training. It's low intensity cardiovascular training. So this is like the heart rate training, and a lot of you probably heard about zone 2, zone 3 training, and whatever zone works for you, and I'm going to explain that. But basically, and this is also listed on pretty much every cardio machine in the gym, the treadmills and the bicycles and the steppers and the ellipticals. They have this chart where you're in the cardio zone or you're in the fat burning zone. So the key to training your body to becoming a fat burning machine, a super efficient cellular metabolic machine, where you can go hours, days without eating with like no trouble at all. The key is to be in your base training, low intensity heart rate zone. And it's actually quite easy to find that zone. I've seen articles and videos where people say 220 minus your age is in the way, but it's good enough, okay? So take the number 220, subtract your age, okay? Take that number and multiply it by 0.6, and that will be the low range for your heart rate. And then take 220 minus your age and multiply that by 0.7, maybe 0.75 if you're in good fitness, good conditioning. And so your range will be 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. And that rough calculation is good enough. I've been doing this and I've helped so many people for decades now. That number is good enough. And all you need to do is commit to training in that heart rate zone, 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. Train in that zone at least 3 times a week for at least 45 minutes per session. You don't have to sprint at the end. This is an easy, low intensity base training workout. Do it 3 to 7 times a week. Okay, 3 to 7 times a week for at least 45 minutes per session. And in 12 weeks, you got to do this for 12 full weeks, you will train your body to be a fat burning machine. And it's amazing. Now, I understand some people, a jog is going to put them 85% of their max heart rate. You got to slow it down. For some people, walking up a hill is going to put them into like above 75% of their max heart rate. You got to slow it down. You just have to go slow enough with a low enough intensity that you're in that 60 to 70% range for at least 45 minutes per session, at least 3 times a week, hopefully 5 to 6 times a week for 12 weeks. Now, this is a really easy workout, okay? And a lot of people can't do it. They can't do it because we're so trained that we have to work hard. We have to have buckets of sweat. We have to be like exhausted, like P90X exhausted or boot camp exhausted or HIIT, high intensity interval training exhausted or workout of the day exhausted to think that we're getting a good workout. But that's not true. Those are good workouts for some reason. But if you want to teach your body to be a fat burning machine and not have this hypoglycemic, bonking, hitting the wall, hangry problem anymore, this is how you do it, okay? Now I'm going to go a little bit into the biology of it, and I might actually save this for another video, so we'll see how this all turns out. This is what I've learned. This is how I've trained so many athletes and non-athletes, and what I do for myself every year. So every year I go through another base training phase, another 12-week, 3-month cycle of this low intensity base training, the way I described earlier, this lower heart rate, very easy training in order to reprime and recalibrate my body. Now, over the years, I can go faster and faster. I can run harder, and my heart rate is still in the 60 to 75% max heart rate range, but that's because I'm in good enough condition that I can go faster, but I'm still keeping my heart rate in that 60 to 70, maybe 75% of my max heart rate, but I don't let it go above that. And I usually do this base training during my off season. So triathlon off season could be like October, November, December, or November, December, January. And that's when I go to my base training. So if you don't have a heart rate monitor, which a lot of watches do now, there's also some other ways that you can tell when you're fully aerobic, getting all the oxygen that you need, okay? I have to take a breath too. So other ways that you can tell, and you've heard about this for years probably, is if you're able to exercise, like you're going on a walk and you can carry on a normal conversation with a friend, that means you're getting enough oxygen. Another way that you can tell is if you're getting just the slightest bit of sweat on your brow or on your upper lip, just a little bit of sweat, not this gushing profuse sweating, but just the slightest dampening, then you know that you're probably in your aerobic heart rate zone. Another way is you get sort of stereo vision or stereo hearing where everything seems to be open and you're aware of all of your surroundings and everything. Whereas when you're in a sprint, you're like focusing on a dot, right? But when you're fully aerobic, everything opens up. Again, a sprint, when you're anaerobic, you're just focusing on a dot. But when you're fully aerobic, your view and your hearing all expands, okay? Also, you're not going to get any kind of soreness in your muscles because one of the byproducts of anaerobic exercise is lactic acid. So that lactic acid builds up in our muscles because we're creating energy, ATP, anaerobically without oxygen. And the byproduct is lactic acid. And then that's when we start getting the muscle soreness during or afterwards. That's because we're exercising anaerobically. So you shouldn't have any kind of soreness. When you finish a fully aerobic base training workout, you should feel like, wow, I feel really good. I feel really energized. I could do that workout again. I don't really want to do that workout again, but I could if I had to, because I'm not exhausting and dropping and plummeting my blood sugar doing all of that anaerobic exercise. Okay. So do this kind of base training. And I know most of my videos and most of what I talk about are not quick instant gratification fixes. These things take time, but that's what health and life is and wellness is all about, is the day in and day out practice, which I talked about in another video. Is we have to do these things over and over again, practice them, prime our body, prime our mind, depending on what we're doing, and then our body, our mind, our heart, we will learn how to be more efficient with what we're talking about today in this video. So you can become a fat burning machine. You can cure your hypoglycemia, your bonking issues. You won't need the gels and the sugary drinks and the gel. There's the gels, and then there are like the shot blocks or the gummy kind of nutrition when you're exercising, which are mostly sugar. Again, you won't need that. And by not putting all of that sugar in your system, in your GI tract during your exercise bouts, your stomach, you're going to have a lot fewer GI issues, whether it's coming out the back end like it did when I was backpacking, or, coming, forward with vomit or burping or distended belly, because all that sugar, that's what it does to your GI tract. It really, all that acidity really messes up your GI tract. So you won't be a slave to having to eat every 2 hours and having to take all these sugary gels and so on. Of course, if you're diabetic and you're insulin dependent, you can check this stuff out with your doctor. But doctors learn about basic cellular metabolism, in school. Maybe they forgot it, but they do learn it, early in their careers. But you can take back control of your life and not have these hypoglycemic and bonking and hitting the wall issues anymore. If you train your body rather than force your body through diet, you can train your body through proper exercise. You don't have to change your diet at all, actually. You can but you're going to probably eventually want to, because those items aren't going to appeal to you anymore. But you train your body to be a fat burning machine by going through these 12-week cycles annually of low intensity base training. So I hope that helps. I hope I've explained a lot for you. And until next time, peace, love, and connect.